All right, so today I'm going to be recapping the two trades I took today. And one I'm going to call the burn it and learn from it trade. I'm going to start doing this going forward just to kind of commit this to my memory and try to avoid, it from happening in the future, or at least adjusting properly. And then the bucket and playbook it trade of the day, which subsequently was a win. And so for that reason, I should have some form of a repeatable process whenever this opportunity does present itself again, or something similar with similar clues and characteristics. So let's start with the burn it and learn from it trade. So basically, to sum it up, I took a short right off of here. I was longing right off of the low of day here in this where I circled. This was the initial low of day. This was the first test. And basically this candle blew right through because I had stops just below the low of day. And I'll get into what that price was. Actually, I'll just show you right quick. The low of day was 63.75 here. My stops were, I think, at 375.50. My stops were right where I got stopped out at 63.74.25, which was about a point and a quarter, so about 5 ticks of a stop loss stopped me out here after this slight bounce and continuation to the downside, which again, it was a great decision by myself to set a tight stop loss, so that way it was a paper cut. And really my hope with this trade, and the reason I left my order there at the low, was because I figured if it was going to bounce, it was going to bounce immediately and provide that cushion that my trade would have needed to just continue to survive any chop and continuation. But clearly that didn't happen, and I'm going to cover the clues as to why, or what I should have noticed or kind of put together for avoiding, even leaving this trade. These orders in for this trade to happen from the beginning. And so the first one was the clue number one, the rejection, right? So we had the rejection off the 20. We had the first test, the reattempt, the rejection, the grind back up, the rejection, which led us into clue number two, which is the lack of follow through to test the low of the day. I think if this, and I kind of drew this white line here, this arrow, to kind of highlight the fact that if this would have dropped to low of day at this time, which was around, I believe it was around about 9 a.m. to 9:10. If this would have dropped, I think that bounce I was seeking for would have possibly been more likely at that point. But the fact that we chopped through made it less probable by the time I was willing to get long at the low day, because there was no buyers present at that time ready to convincingly take the market long. So that's what I would call clue number two, lack of follow through to test the low of the day. Should have been a clue like, hey, it got defended early. And the fact that we had sideways trading indecision for over an hour, it looks like, I forget how long it was. It was from like 9 to 10 a.m. Was also another clue. And this fourth clue here being the rejection and the high right shoulder, which could have provided some form of breakout continuation, but instead absolutely rejected with these large candles kind of just falling to the ground basically, and some choppy action, some choppy ranging candles here, indecision, another red candle dropping to the floor. Was the fifth clue, what I would have called after clue number four, which kind of showed that sellers were still in control, willing to take the market lower if possible. And this fifth clue was the tight head and shoulder formation, which only was validated once we seen this big red candle and the subsequent candles that tested the neckline, and there was just a volume kind of dropped a little bit, and choppy price action here. No clear defense by the buyers allowed the sellers to come test and break through the low of day, where it seemed like buyers weren't willing to catch a falling knife based off of this evidence that we've seen where sellers were convincingly able to drop the market down. Buyers were more so kind of chopping their way up despite this, this candle, these few candles here, but it just seemed like sellers continued to reject and we're still in control, so to speak. So that should have, and yeah, this perfect, clue number 6, perfect 1, 2, 3 candle setup right here, showing decision and weakness from lack of defense, prompting the opportunity for the break of the low, and that's exactly what happened. So, in hindsight, let me zoom out here. In hindsight, even though it could have bounced, right? Regardless of all those clues that set this up, I guess what I'm trying to remind myself is that, there's no reason to kind of force that, even though I wanted to be a part of the reversal, unless, like, again, the setup was perfectly aligned where if this dropped at around 9 a.m. into the low of day, then there probably would have been buyers willing to step in earlier in the morning. So number one, so reasons to have not taken this Hail Mary trade, to kind of summarize. This move did not come immediately after the 8:42 a.m. double top, as I mentioned, the move into the low of day. If it had come by 9:30 a.m. and not 10:15, maybe it would have been the better play, higher probable bounce. The sideways trading range buildup after 9 a.m. was the clue that the market was seeking a test for the lows. The upper right shoulder top at 9:54 a.m. was a major clue to temporary weakness. And then the tight staircase price action from 10:11 to 10:14 a.m. signaled the indecision. And that's this little area here, showing a major sign of weakness for the short term, where sellers were able to regain control and continued dropping to the lows and past. So the positives was that I adjusted my stops logically and took a paper cut Hail Mary trade for a tight stop loss of 5 ticks, so about 1.25 points, which was equivalent to about $312 plus the fee, so about $330 or so. And the adjustments I can make for the future, before that, I maintained composure after the paper cut and brushed it off with conviction that it was a clue to use for the reversal when the lack of selling was showing, which will lead us into the bucket trade, the winning trade I took today. With that being said, some adjustments for the future I can make are only prepare orders at lows with logical signals leading up to the drop. So again, the clues, like I mentioned, if at this point this would have provided the drop down to the low of the day, then again that balance may have had some higher probability at that point. So logical signals such as that leading up to the drop, that there could be a strong possibility of a quick bounce, such as initial attempt at a lower levels, unlike today, with a failed M formation. I'm calling this the M formation. Reminds me of like the McDonald's M, and choppy action into the low of day. All right, so that kind of sums up that trade there. Now, that's what we're gonna burn. In terms of booking and playbooking a trade, the trade I really liked today was the reversal I took, basically nearing the low of day. So we had this choppy staircase down reversal. We're gonna call this trade the choppy staircase down reversal. And in this one, choppy staircase drop reversal. We're gonna call it a drop reversal because it dropped and reversed, and we were long in this setup for the staircase way up. So for this trade, before I go into, I guess I'll just cover the tags here after I kind of show where I got long at. So you can see here, I was able to get long right around this area and take that winning trade with stops, just below and just above low of day at that point. And I'll get into that and kind of go into all the clues in just a second. But let me just get into the tags. Some other tags for this trade could be like a choppy staircase down with the inside bar staircase up to the right side of the V. On the right side of the V, I'm sorry. And the right side of the V is really just, we have a V here and we're taking the trade on the right side and not necessarily getting long on the left side where it would require a wider stop loss. And in terms of time risk, being on the left side of V could prompt continuation. So, right, so you kind of want to be able to try to get on the right side, get in on the right side of the V. Where you get in on the right side of the V just depends on what levels you're looking at, and also where you're willing to put on risk, whether it's earlier like I did today or a little bit later like I normally would have, maybe around here on the breakout of this this yellow channel here, targeting, you know, maybe the midpoint of the day, right? And then I can call it maybe the symmetric V, right? The inverse head and shoulder continuation. The reason I call it inverse head and shoulder is because I had seen that this liquidity we were building up here was a big clue for a left shoulder and a possible reversal and use of this liquidity built up to kind of just push through, which subsequently provided a chop towards the rest of the day. Yeah, those are some tags, some names that can help me, you know, playbook and commit this type of trade to memory. So I think the choppy staircase drop reversal, it's a little long, but you know, there's no clear name for me for it besides the generic right side of the V trade. But I think just signaling that the choppy staircase kind of provided that, hey, I can see that this is setting up for a symmetrical reversal, I think was the big clue in my mind when I, you know, look back at the footage of the live footage in the trade I took today. So let's cover the clues quickly. So the first clue was clue number 0 going into the day, and this is something I talked about with my community in the Discord with some friends, was that the 5 and the 20 SMA have been serving as magnets. It was being a magnet for support, which eventually we broke through the 20 MA, tested it all day on Wednesday, broke through above. We're kind of confined to it overnight Wednesday, again resisting off of it, and into today, resisting off of it again today and rejecting. And so that was already a clue for me that was top of mind, in addition to the 5 MA, which we had kind of lost since, really, was it Monday? I think it was Monday. Yeah, Monday, where we had tested, we're kind of, you know, just chopping side. Oh, that was a terrible day. And then finally kind of rejecting, you know, basically not testing it, but coming close to it. So that was clue number 0. But clue number 1 for this trade was that we had this ranging trade. We had the ranging trading channel form in the first 2 hours and a half. And what this tells me is that we're ranging, and obviously we're ranging, but we are ranging with some momentum and, you know, a wider range, which was about I think a 30 plus point range, $3 on the SPY, 30 point plus on the ES, which is fair. It's not a chop like we had seen on Monday. And that, you know, was in the back of my head, like, okay, we ranged for the first 2 hours, not specifically a trend day, doesn't, you know, it could trend towards the end of the day for whatever XYZ reason, but as of now, it's highly unlikely. Clue number 2 was that the low of the day had not yet been tested, besides the attempt to break above the 20 MA, which continuously failed. And then clue number 3 was the strength in the selling that came right around this time at 8:50. And this is right when I began looking at the market, because I decided to take a break for the first 2 hours and try to hop in the second quarter. I call the 9 to 11 a.m. The second quarter, 11 to 1 p.m. the third quarter. 6:30 to 7 a.m. doesn't count as a quarter. It's more like the range setting, 30 minutes open for me. And then first quarter, 7 to 9 a.m. Yeah, seen that range, and I was like, okay, interesting. And then the fourth clue was, you know, liquidity building here. I spotted that and noticed that it was, you know, it seemed like it could form an inverse head and shoulder, or even just a shoulder of liquidity with a possible double bottom, to reverse back to the magnet of the 20 MA and towards the 5 MA, possibly. And then the fifth clue was the sideways trading channel. we already talked about the sideways trading channel, but really the high right shoulder rejection, which signaled short-term weakness. And this one was a big clue that I noticed, was like, hey, you know what? I've seen this before. It wasn't like a perfect, double top rejection, but also it was just like a weird lopsided, high right shoulder rejection with some, momentum, with candles that were just dropping to the floor, but then some choppy reversal back into the ranging action. Some choppiness here. Again, another red candle dropping to the floor. We talked about this, pattern here that signaled we could test the low a day, possibly break it as well, which ended up happening. And so that left me wondering here, was like, yo, I've seen this before, but typically when this sort of price action starts to happen, it just seems like it's building liquidity, and it will probably test the low a day. Could bounce, that was my initial thesis. But, also was very possible that it could break down, but I just didn't see continuation happening at that point. And I think another clue for me was that I didn't put here was this yellow line here that I had mapped out, and this lower band of it where we had a bounce here. But this yellow line really served as like a midpoint selling trend of this, kind of sideways selling channel, where we weren't really able to break above it until obviously we broke out here and the reversal came. But notice how we did come close to the lower band of the channel again, and the reversal came, which kind of, that is, a sort of confluence in and of itself for me as well, kind of like a measuring stick, if you will, similar to that of how mathematical indicators work. That's why I like to chart a lot, and my chart becomes a mess, but it just kind of is muscle memory to me, just based off of habits I built up, and it just allows me to read and get a general like ruling of measurement, rather, of how the market is doing right now. But really the sixth clue was the sign of weak selling by the 8th consecutive candle here. So this weak selling here with this like choppy staircase, and again, back to the names, choppy staircase drop, just immediately clicked in my head. If you go back, if you see the live review that I'm posting, you'll notice that I mentioned like, yo, I feel like I've seen this before. The right shoulder kind of provides a reversal as well. And it was all just kind of coming back, like muscle memory in a way. And I kind of had felt it, and was more just, intuition. It was more intuition and in the moment thinking, and just quick execution without, second guessing and overthinking it, that it really allowed me to kind of see that coming. And I was like, okay, cool. Here, what I wanted to see on this candle at 1025, once I seen this candle, I was like, yo, I like this drop, because what I had started to see as well was we would have this drop and then kind of a reversal, type of price action a lot today, where I'm like, okay, this was indecision here. It was barely selling without conviction. Sellers are starting to, lose control. Buyers not stepping in just yet, but there has to be a sign where, buyers are willing to step in and reject. And this red candle here, when it was closing, I was like, oh, I like that. I like how that's closing. I want to see a tweezer. Basically, what I wanted to see was just a green engulfing candle like this, kind of matching its low and high, and opening right above on the next candle, where it would have been perfect symmetry, right? A perfect reversal. Didn't happen, but when this candle closed, I even said that I was like, I don't like how it had a lower wick basically, and kind of it didn't open perfectly aligned with the price here. Nevertheless, I was like, okay, I'm seeing the symmetry here. Once this candle opened, I was ready to get in. It took me like a few seconds to get in, and it was leaving me. I placed my order right around here, because based off of where I wanted my stop to be, I think it was like around here, I wanted to make sure I got filled, so I was willing to chase it about, I think, like half a point, maybe 2 ticks, 3 ticks, just because of how tight my stop loss was going to be and how close we were going to be to low day, that if my trade was going to be an 8 trade, if it was going to work out as I envisioned it would, based off of all these confluences, all these clues, it was going to work out immediately and push through. And that's exactly what happened and how it played out. And so, you know, with some luck, with some determination, with some patience, you know, even though I took a trade like maybe, what was it, like maybe like 10 minutes prior, but with composure. I think that's what I'm proud of my composure. And also my strategy here was that my stop loss were going to be tight. If my stop loss was like a 3-4 point stop loss because I kept moving it down and finally gave in, yeah, I would have probably been on tilt. But the fact that I was able to come back for that was something I was really proud of, and ended up taking basically a 14-point banger. It was a beautiful trade. I think it was like 13 3/4 ticks, so maybe I got in a little bit later, something like that. But and my stop was definitely 2 points, so yeah, I could have gotten at 73.25. I forget where the order was. It's no longer here, but I guess I can pull it up on Trade08. But anyways, yeah, it worked out. It was a great trade, and it's something that I want to just, you know, commit to memory. And if I see this sort of ranging price action, this boot, right, this high right shoulder break to the first test of the low a day, after this choppy, you know, action, sideways trading, it could signal a potential reversal to prepare for, and that's how I was able to execute today. Put on risk early. What I will say is that, again, back to this yellow channel here, I was already anticipating that my breakout trade, if I didn't take the initial trade, would have been, you know, breaking out of the channel. And it was likely that I would have gotten in maybe above this level once we, you know, would have engulfed it and opened right at the level. I would have probably been willing to take this trade for about, you know, maybe 6 ticks to win about, was it 8 times 4, 32 plus ticks on this trade. So yeah, about 1.5 to 8.5. Still a great risk to reward right there, 5.6 risk to reward. Still would have been a great trade as well, but I was able to take a banger trade on this one here and take profits pretty early. Yeah, actually that's where I took profit, 63.87. Yeah, so that's kind of the bucket trade. Again, we're gonna call that the choppy staircase drop reversal. Yeah, I'm gonna have to come up with some better names, but yeah, hopefully I can continue trending in the right direction. You know, it's not gonna be linear, it's not gonna be easy, but I hit my funding target, so I'll be converting hopefully within the next week. I still have some trading days criteria to meet, but at this point I'm just gonna milk it and you know, just make sure this account gets funded. And my goal is to continue to make these videos and recap, win or lose, especially lose, because that's when you know, there is a lot of opportunity to learn. But even in winning as well, I think reinforcement's important, and that confidence it's building. And yeah, that'll do it for me today. It's been David. Peace.